All right. So I'm really excited right now because I am seated next to two women, two badasses. We were just calling Dr. Michelle Ward the PhD having, Barbie looking badass. But I think that also applies to you. Now, I don't think you have your PhD, but
No,
you're a badass.
That's not a credential that I get.
Yeah. Now listen, I don't either. But you're both badasses to me, and you both have your shit together. And I'm super excited to talk to you specifically, especially because Melissa and I just got done recording regarding the Gilgo murders case, the serial killer case.
Have you been asked about that, by the way?
A little bit, not a ton. Because in my world, this wasn't that unusual, his case.
Okay.
But so, yeah, I've talked a little bit about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Has the media reached out to you to give quotes? Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
We'll go into it.
Yeah, we'll go into it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but I mean, nobody can I want you to tell us what is your background, kind of how you got into this and what are you doing today? And of course, at the end of the show, I want you to plug all the things you're doing. And I know it's a lot. Because you said.
First of all, thank you for the nicest intro ever. I mean, it's lies. I mean, unless you're talking about mature Barbie, but
no, I met you at CrimeCon and I knew like last year in Vegas, and I was like, I really like her. You're one of those that looks can be deceiving. You're strikingly gorgeous, so it can be intimidating, but you're also very highly educated and you have your shit together career-wise. And so people might think, oh gosh, she's just going to be so serious and buttoned up. But I got a vibe from you that you're a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, especially in Vegas.
In Vegas.
I'm a lot of fun in Vegas.
We need a girls trip. We need to go on the road.
I'm
ready.
Say less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us how you got in, what you're doing today, your career background, and kind of like what you do, what projects you work on.
So I'm technically, I have a PhD in clinical neuroscience, but that was studying neuroscience on a human population, strictly aggressive, violent behavior. So instead of rats and monkeys, I studied humans. So career-wise, we call it either a neurocriminologist or a criminal psychologist.
Okay.
So it's all very confusing and I can't spell any of it, but at one point I could. And essentially I studied the biological and genetic underpinnings of violent crime because at the time everybody was just studying the environmental stuff. But
interesting.
Yeah. And it's true. There's so much environmental influence on aggressive behavior, but it's not all of it because if you think about it, there are so many people who come from really traumatic backgrounds who end up being fine.
Okay,
True.
Speaking of that, so I don't know if you know my background, but my father is known as the happy face serial killer. And that's why I'm so excited actually to be talking with you because I get numerous questions that I can only speak from my experience, but not from a scientific approach. And that's why I'm excited to talk to you about it. But the one question I get all the time is nature versus nurture.
Right. That's where
what makes a serial killer? And then the second question is, aren't you scared that you're going to give that genetic gene to your children, that you're going to, raise a serial killer? So when I found out, Dr. Ward, that you have a podcast on how not to raise a serial killer, I'm like, she is the perfect guest today.
Yeah.
For my own curiosity, because of my background, but also for the topic we're going to talk about, which is Rex Heuermann's double life. Because another question that I wish would just go to bed already is, how did you not know? How, in Rex Heuermann's case, how did the wife not know?
Yeah.
They usually don't.
They usually don't.
Of course not.
And thank you, by the way. I did know about your dad. I wasn't going to lead with that because that's awkward. Like, hey, nice to meet you. I hear your dad's.
Although you'd be surprised. So many people who are into crime, probably a crime con, they'd be like, oh my God, your dad was a serial killer. Like, what was it like?
I mean,
what's awkward though, Michelle, is when I go to parties and they don't know my background, they'll be like, oh, on holiday parties, especially, they'll be like, what are you going to do with your parents for the holidays?
Oh.
And I want to say, well, my mom's dead from cancer.
Yeah.
And my dad's in prison.
You're like,
and that's
then
that person just retreats into themselves.
Well,
their butthole clenches. Excuse me.
They retreat with curiosity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're like, God, please tell me more. But sorry.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like, is that contagious? Like, are you going to throw those genes on me if you sneeze? And there's all this misconception about, you are from such an abusive background that you're going to be weird, or you are carrying this constellation of genes.
I'm glad you said that because people say, oh, you're so normal. I'm like, I'm not really, but but in the context of what they're referring to, yes, I am normal. But that's one of the questions that or one of the observations that they made.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because what I also do is I'm also a jury consultant, a litigation consultant, and I work on high profile crimes a lot, those court cases. And the kids of the criminals will come to court and they'll get harangued by the media, they'll get stalked. So it's not just casual kind of true crime fascination. Actually, even in the legal world, if you are the offspring of a criminal, I remember Phil Spector's kids came and like one twin sat on this side and the other twin sat on that side and took different positions in the case. And it was so popular, the consumption, people wanting to be near somebody who's related to a killer it's a bit of a negative cachet, but a cachet nonetheless.
Yeah. That's creepy. I think that we have so many questions for you. I think you're going to drop a lot of knowledge on us and some insight.
It's not.
You're very humble, but I just know that you know your stuff and you are the perfect guest, like Melissa said, for this particular topic. Before we do that though, like you strike me as somebody super fun. Like I said, are you up for a game of Would You Rather just to break the ice?
Ooh, are we going to drink?
Excuse me. I walked in here and somebody said, let's get the shot right. And I'm like,
no, I want margaritas.
Someone say shots.
Shots?
Shots?
Margaritas.
She's all here. They do have beer in the fridge in the studio, I will say. Okay, good. Because we just wanted to break the ice a little bit. We're going to be talking about some things that are a little dark.
And I will say it was super fun creating these questions because I don't even know how I would answer them.
I don't either, but that's why it's going to be
I'm
fun.
going to let you, Jamie, lead. You ask the first question and I'll ask the next question.
Okay. So, and we haven't had a chance to really go over these notes. We did this on the card down here because we thought it would be fun as the three of us to come up with these. But so the first question would be, would you rather be mansplained by a young bro from UCLA, nonetheless? Thank you.
Your school.
Who has
USC. I'm USC.
That's why we did it.
Because
we know you went to USC, and I'm like, he's a young bro
he knows
from
everything.
Rival school, UCLA. He has your degree, and you have to sit there and take it. Or would you rather join an MLM? And if so, which one and why?
Oh gosh. I'm going to go with the mansplaining guy I can bitch slap later.
I love this. And you make a good point. It's like an MLM is just, you're going to have to call your family. You're going to have to hound them on Facebook Messenger. Hey, babe. Like you're probably going to lose friends over it.
Yeah. I mean, I lose friends weekly with the stuff I say, but I just feel like I could handle the
bro.
The bro. I don't know.
You can handle a bro. And we came up with this question because we're like, knowing you're a female in what is probably a male-dominated industry, right? And you're beautiful.
Thank you. I don't see this, but I love you. Will you marry me?
Yes, I will.
Okay, good.
Wait, you're getting married in November,
Details.
it's
already taken.
We take. Yeah. Oh, I like the Mexico wedding idea though.
Oh.
But you probably have had some experiences that are unique to a woman in a male-dominated industry who looks the way you do. And I know you probably are sick of me saying it, but
I'm not ever going to get sick of you saying that.
That it's always going to be problematic on some level, but certainly we've worked long enough in this industry to know that maybe it's gotten better, but like it was really the wild, wild west back in the day.
It was.
As to what a man, and I'm not male bashing, but like all my experiences were men saying things to me and doing things to me that really should have never happened in general, but certainly not in the workplace. I think it has gotten better, but I just, to some degree, it still happens.
Well, I honestly feel part of the reason I went all the way with the PhD is because I wasn't taken as seriously.
Oh,
and I think I could have done the research I did at a master's level.
But you had to double prove yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I just felt like I didn't really have a voice at the table until I got it. And then now, even when I work as a litigation consultant and, attorneys pay me for my opinion, like how should we tell this story? Which witnesses do we need? Let's prepare the witnesses. Let's pick the jury. There are a lot of times they'll look at my male colleagues before they'll look at me. And then someone will be like, well, let's ask her. And sometimes if I don't come forward, and here's the thing, females with PhDs never insist you call them doctor, and I'm included in that.
Why is that? Do you feel that you're asking for an entitlement or to be treated special?
I don't know.
It's almost like the audacity of a woman it's almost like you're braggadocious or something and you don't deserve to be. That's the way
Or maybe it's because you just you want people to feel comfortable around you. So like as a female, you have a nurturing perspective, and you don't want to make anybody feel less than or inferior.
You want to disarm people so that you have a relationship with them. And I don't know if that's exclusive to females, but I know that I prefer to be disarmed and I prefer to disarm. So I think part of it is that. And also I just got to a point where I didn't care. Like, you don't have to listen to me. You just paid me an exorbitant amount of money for my opinion, but don't listen to it. That's fine. Go lose your case. Or, whatever. I care a lot less now than I did in the beginning, but my mom would send packages that didn't just say Dr. Michelle Ward. Doctor would be spelled out.
Not DR.
DOCTOR.
I love it.
I'm like, so it was worth it just to.
So when you get married, are your announcements going to say Dr. Michelle Ward, not Mrs.?
No, no. Mrs. Ward is my mother. Well, she's passed away, but no, I didn't do either. But I certainly didn't take anybody's last name because A, I really like my last name. And
I do too.
B, I'm like, 50% of us are going to get divorced. And
it's a lot of work to change.
Well, it really is a lot of work.
Your passport.
It's a pain in the ass. I mean, it was like it's always the last thing you do. It's like, we had been married for quite a while. And it's like, so are you going to go do the thing with the last name? I'm like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And I did eventually. But and it was hard for me because my two older kids have their father's last name, and I didn't want it. I felt like I was detaching from them. But I knew, like, my bond with my kids is so strong. It's not about a last name. And it was also weird for me to keep that last name and be married to this man. And so I took my new husband's, I call him new, we've been married over a decade, but his last name, that's what I wanted to do. But I certainly would have no issue also just going back to Jamie Craig, my maiden name. But I just knew pretty quickly I didn't want to keep my previous husband's name.
No, it's awkward.
My bond with my kids is like, they're like, Mom.
They don't care.
Okay, so I'm the awkward one. I kept my ex-husband's last name.
But that's
but Melissa Moore,
I thought about it too.
It's great. Also, when you go back to your dad's name?
Yeah, never.
Right. See, that's
never go back to Jesperson. No. But like, so when I just got married last year.
Okay.
And thank you. That was one of the things I thought about, even doing a hyphen, like Melissa Moore / Knoyer, or but I have adult children, so they don't really need me to have the last name, but I feel like I'm Melissa Moore. Like, I don't associate it with my ex-husband. I associate it with me. That's who
You've
I
been
am.
that person for so many years.
Yeah, it's who I am now.
Yeah.
When you guys also both have huge careers, like changing your name would be awkward at this stage,
It's
right?
weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It would be weird.
Also, how the hell do you spell that last name, that new one?
I know.
Don't.
Knoyer.
Yeah,
well, and they get it wrong all the time. They call it Knoyer.
Of course.
Well, and he is in the military, and so they give nicknames to each other in the military, and he's Steve Annoyer Knoyer.
Poor Steve.
Can we? Okay, that is a really good one, but I'm trying to decide between the nickname that Michelle shared with us. You don't have to share it on mic. But,
I don't care.
Okay.
When the day I graduated, we ended up going to like an SC game, and people were like celebrating, and this guy comes up to me and they're like, "Oh, she just got her PhD," and he's like, "More like PhD." And it stuck.
It's like, you asshole, but also like it is pretty catchy.
It's catchy.
And he kind of rapped it. He's all PhD. And like, I don't even know if he meant it, but it certainly got traction.
Oh my God. Okay, that is so good. Oh my God. Well, okay. So are you up for a couple more? Would you rather?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Melissa, you got one for?
All right. Would you rather be in a Mommy and Me almond mom group, or in a smoking only casino playing the penny slots with bloodshot eyes?
Mom group, as if that's a mom group as well.
Like
what's an almond?
Like an almond bomb. Okay, so do you ever watch The Housewives?
No, I get scared.
Okay. Oh
no, I can't handle conflict, and like, serial killers are fine.
See,
like,
that is
Real
an
Housewives
interesting
scare you.
I get so much anxiety. So much anxiety.
That is interesting that you say that, because I had to stop watching the Beverly Hills Women because it got to be. I had anxiety. I hated a couple of them so much, and what they would do. And I just wanted to jump through the screen and be like, bah! And that I couldn't. And what they were doing, it just gave me anxiety.
Yeah, no.
Okay. I understand, but serial killers and
I'm like, listen, give me the autopsy photos, no problem.
And almond mom, I guess I bring up The Housewives because Yolanda Hadid was a model back in the day.
Yes.
She married what's his name?
Muhammad.
but-
So she had supermodel daughters. And anyway, she was on the show and she's the quintessential almond mom. So when her daughter, who also was a model, called her and was like, I'm hungry. She's like, oh, honey, eat a couple almonds.
Oh,
you got to get on the
I
runway.
thought that was just Giselle.
No,
Okay, no, almond mom.
Well,
so like the skinny moms?
Yeah, like, and they kind of,
it's different.
they teach their kids like problematic.
It's
dietary.
The culture. It's the 90s diet culture that the moms grew up with, which is, low fat.
I definitely did.
Can't eat full fat dressing, dip your fork in the dressing.
Yes, and then put it in the salad.
Put it in the salad. It's kind of
maybe I'm an almond mom. Shit.
It's some of the Weight Watcher mentality too. I feel like that was blended in with like fat phobia.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably say I don't mean to be an almond mom, but my daughter would call me an almond mom.
Yeah, my daughter would.
And that's only because I'm calorie conscious. I'm always watching what I eat and working out. I try not to impose the diet culture that I was raised with to my children, but I think it probably leaks into it.
But I think that's part
Without
of being an
knowing.
almond mom. I think that's why Yolanda Hadid got so much heat from that comment that she made to her supermodel daughter. Oh, honey, just eat a couple almonds. You've got to get on the runway. And she was hungry and like needed lunch. So it's really not all, I don't think it's all about just you and your own dietary. It's you're pushing that toxicity onto your daughter and sort of like body shaming and diet shaming and like, just eat a couple almonds. Oh, honey, do you really need to have that second bite of the cake? That I think is also part of being an almond mom. So it's pretty problematic, but I could be wrong. But Yolanda Hadid is like where I think the term came from
because she said
that.
almond.
But
All
also,
right.
okay, thinking about a casino, there's a lady sitting next to you blowing smoke in your face.
That sucks.
And you're winning on the penny slots.
Guys,
you're up to $20.
I have way too much experience with both of these groups. I feel like I'd be right at home with either, and that's embarrassing.
No,
but it's real. True. I mean, my mom used to smoke. We'd go to Monty's in Pasadena, and I'd be lying asleep in the booth, and all you see is smoke. And like that did happen in Vegas. She loved to gamble, and I'm from LA.
Yeah,
so
the 90s.
I definitely had so much. Like, I can't believe it's not butter. Like non-fat cheese. Can we talk about the rubber that is non-fat cheese?
It's so gross.
So I'm going to have to say I would rather go with the Almond Mom group only because I don't want more wrinkles from the smoke.
There you go.
Okay. Now that is
but doesn't
really
that make me an
point.
almond mom?
Because I am about not getting the wrinkles. Like, it's just, okay, that's a really interesting Okay.
Okay, so you're next, Jami.
Okay, so Michelle, you are free on a Saturday evening. Are you going to the beer drinking backyard barbecue shindig, or are you going to dinner and cocktails at Nobu?
I'm doing both.
Oh gosh,
100% doing both.
Okay,
what if the barbecue had screaming toddlers in the pool, screaming "mommy"?
Are they mine?
That are being ignored because everybody's drinking, and it's just it's gonna go south. Like, and all the dudes I picture are probably wearing flat bill hats and black socks, and drive lifted trucks, maybe.
Okay, who am I going to Nobu with?
Oh,
us.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, that's a given.
Done. As long as no one's drowning, the toddlers, the black sock men can like fetch the kids out of the pool.
Yeah.
Black sock men. I only say that, listen, I am very I'm from the 909. Okay. So I was born in San Bernardino. Yeah, exactly. Girl, I was born in San Bernardino, raised in Redlands, Highland.
Stop.
Went to school in Redlands. And so I identify as a 909er. In fact, my phone number is still 909.
Wait, you know what? Now that's going to be cool vintage. Don't ever change
Okay, so
that.
I'm not going to.
Do you go to Big Bear really early and start drinking at 9 a.m. on the lift?
Okay, so we did.
Yeah.
We used to go snowboarding. We would drink. We would probably crack beers on the way up there. Don't do that. I would never do that today in our Honda Civic or a lifted truck. Maybe there was a lifted truck, blasting, I don't know, some 909 Kid Rock.
I may or may not have joined you from Pasadena, coming to the 210 up to Big Bear. But it lives on. I saw more Honda Civics lowered in the snow.
Oh, they all had in the snow, the coffee can muffler on the lowered coffee can muffler.
Oh,
yeah, and you can hear it going up the street. There were a lot of those in my high school.
Like, the irony is, there are probably people from all over the world listening to your podcast, going, "What the hell are these women?"
They don't.
talking about?
It's Southern California, but it's a certain sector of Southern California. It's the 909. It's the Inland Empire. It's San Bernardino, Highland, Pomona, Redlands. that's where I grew up. I only got out. I survived the 909. This girl got plucked out of the 909 because I met my husband, and he's from the San Fernando Valley,
where I'm from.
Yeah,
it's not all that different.
No, exactly. I was gonna say he has some bro. Like he's not a bro. Trust me. Sorry, bros, but he is. We kind of have a similar upbringing. He's from the Valley. I'm from the 909. Neither are glamorous.
It's very smoggy in both places.
Soup's smoggy.
Yeah, and then if you go to the West Side, they're like all of you suck. Like you're all lame.
Yes.
Okay, so I grew up in the Pacific Northwest with flannel and men posting pictures of fish, holding fish.
Oh, was it grunge rock too?
It was Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Nirvana, and it was grunge, and it was dirty hair. And,
okay, were they wearing Teva River sandals?
With socks?
That's in now.
I know.
Crocs are
socks
in.
And Crocs.
Oh my gosh. I was just at the lake.
Sorry.
I love it.
No, it's hilarious. I was at the lake in Idaho last week, and my friends, I went to Coeur d'Alene for a wedding, but I went to Priest Lake. It's gorgeous. And so one of my friends invited one of this guy, and he took his Crocs off, and he had tan line from the Crocs. It looked like
the holes?
It had holes. Like the holes in the Crocs, he had like brown spots on his feet from the Croc tan.
And you didn't make out with him?
No, I didn't. Oh my God,
girl.
No. I was like,
you passed up that chance. Oh,
okay.
Can I just tell you? And this person shall remain nameless because I might get arrested. I don't know. Me and my friends, and my sister, got invited to go to an extremely world famous person's house. And this one particular time, the guy who lived at the house, he would receive all her packages and stuff. We went out in her SUV. I looked in the glove box, and it said, walked all through house. Her artwork is amazing. We just saw everything. So long story short, we got ham-skied out at the clubs, come back in her guest house, and my sister peed in her sink.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That's why we can't say her name. Because that's so disrespectful.
I think we need to beep your
What?
sister's name.
I know. I'm not saying my sister's name. Everybody got ham-skied. We did clean up the next morning, and I'm like so embarrassed. This was years ago. And it wasn't me, it's my sister.
But you share 50% of your genes.
Thank you for reminding me. Shit.
Wait, that's brilliant.
So the peeing in the sink, I do think it's weird. Now, my sister was hammered and somebody was in the bathroom and she was going to pee her pants. That's the reason. Not that that's a good enough reason.
That's good context.
And we did clean up the next day. I would never do it now. And I think
thank you for playing along.
Thank you. You're such a good sport. We just wanted to break the ice because we are going to talk about a little bit of a dark topic. And why don't we get right into it? But before we do, I just kind of want to know what got you into the field that you're in today, and what specifically got you interested in predatory behavior?
Yeah. I feel like I have to be a little bit careful because Melissa, this is, it's personal stuff. It's actually
totally
like your dad is the type of, there's two different kinds of killers. There's several different types of killers, but if you were to break it down to its most rudimentary level, at least when we would teach undergrad courses, it's like you have your impulsive type killers, they get into a bar fight and they kill their girlfriend in a fit of rage. And then you have your predatory type of killers, the cold blood. And the operating systems couldn't be further apart.
What makes, we're fascinated by women killers, hence Lipstick and Lies. What makes a woman a predator killer?
So women are fascinating. It's easier to become a killer if you're a male. The wall is smaller. To be a female, usually our female serial killers and our female stalkers are more dangerous than their male counterparts. That's confusing because they're very rare and they're often not as prolific, but they're usually better at it. So if one does decide to become a very good female serial killer, they're usually going to get away with it. I was just on a podcast I was on Piers Morgan's show. Piers.
Oh, he had killer women.
Yes. Wait, he did. No. It was uncensored. I could not think of his show.
Okay.
And that was yesterday. And they had this question like, well, why would someone nurse Lucy Letby? Why would she kill babies? How could you kill a baby? How would you kill a baby? I'm like, you're thinking of her as a nurse. She's a serial killer who is in a place where there's victims everywhere. And I hate saying this, it's really rude, but it's low-hanging fruit. So sex workers, homeless people, and babies are really easy to kill. So if you're thrill seeking and that's what you're looking for, you go where you have a great, not a breeding ground, but kind of like a hunting ground for that. So the way I got into that is people had talked a lot about the environmental issues that kind of contribute to killing. But for me, it's like, but why? Why can one person grow up in the most abusive environment and become a total dick? And then, I mean, a totally wonderful person, and another person can have a perfect family and become a dick. What is the individual differences? And that's usually biology and genes. Okay. Now, you can't study biology and genes without understanding the environment. So it's not studying one without the other. It's just that nobody was at the time really looking at it.
To say what people say to me, is there a serial killer gene?
There's a constellation of genes that recombine. So this was my dissertation. I looked at it in children. I looked at psychopathic behavior in 9 to 11-year-olds, and I used identical and fraternal twins so that I could isolate how much of it is genetic and how much is environment. We do that mathematically. This is where I nerd out.
Okay, so this is going to be fun.
Identical twins share 100% of their non-segregating genes. So genetically, they're almost identical. Fraternal twins are just like regular brothers and sisters, but born at the same time. So mathematically, you have 100% genes, 50% genes, and then you have shared environment and individual environment. So you can look at large, massive groups of these people and study how similar identical twins are to each other versus how similar fraternal twins are to each other. And if in any given trait, from reading ability to killing, if identical twins mathematically are more similar to each other than fraternal twins, it suggests a genetic component involved. Now, this can get really boring and convoluted, but essentially what we figured out is if you look at the pedigree of a serial killer, or psychopathy, let's make it broader. Let's make it psychopathy. And that occurs in about 1 out of every 100 people. But most of us are prosocial psychopaths if we're going to be psychopaths. And I say we because I don't like to exclude the psychopaths among us.
I mean,
listen, it's a protected group now.
Right.
So,
jeez.
You'll find it's not so much father to daughter. You'll see great uncle Larry. And 2 to 3 generations later, a little psychopath pops up again.
So if I look at my family tree, I have another psychopath in my tree, another serial killer in my tree.
You do? Or you're saying, no, you might have somebody with that constellation of genes. So what we learned is that it's inherited. It's a group of genes. We don't know which, but it's a group of genes that kind of turns it on or not. So you might find throughout your pedigree that you have people with psychopathic features, but it's not usually one generation to the other. Now, this is all broad. It's not exact, but this is what the tendencies, this is what we're seeing.
Well, this is fascinating because there's another question I get asked. Are you afraid of spawning a serial killer? And I never was afraid of that. I really wasn't afraid. And thankfully, my children are fabulous. And
you'd know by now.
Yeah, I would absolutely know. They're super empathetic. They have all of the markers of being regular, nice, good people. But then I guess a question would be, knowing what you just explained to me, could it be genetically passed down through them to another generation then?
Well, certainly, but there's good news.
Okay, so please share the good news. Now I'm scared. My kids are not going to want to have kids.
No, and don't be scared because look, our leaders of our countries are psychopaths usually. Like hedge fund managers are psychopaths. Surgeons are often psychopaths. Being a psychopath is not necessarily negative. So what you're going to find, I don't know how personal to make this, but your dad was interested in killing. And psychopaths are very goal-driven people who lack guilt, remorse, and empathy. So that can pop up again. Callous and emotional is what we call it in children, and it can translate into adulthood. I mean, children are generally callous and unemotional.
Wait, hold on. I got scared for a second that I have a budding serial killer.
Yeah, no, it's unusually callous and unemotional. Like they love it when you get hurt, and they laugh, and it's really funny when the family pet dies, and that kind of callous and unemotional.
Scary.
And that can become traits of psychopathy later, but you nudge them into pro-social stuff. So if they're always sensation seekers, they're always looking for thrills, and you want their thrill to be something pro-social. If they love winning and the gambling, get them into finance. If they love like solving a problem, surgery, whatever. I mean, there's some downsides to having your surgeon being a psychopath. Don't get me wrong. But generally speaking, 1 out of 100 of us is not a small number. So yeah, you could have, a psychopathic grandchild who is pro-social because you know to nudge, you know to give the omega-3s, you know to give them an outlet for their thrill-seeking behavior. And you have the resources to make sure that committing small, petty crimes isn't the only way they get their thrill.
Yes.
Okay.
And like, you know, so it almost sounds like, and obviously there's just no, it's not, this doesn't apply every single time, but in general terms, it seems like if somebody has the psychopath genes, what would you call them?
Predisposition.
Predisposition
toward psychopathy.
And is raised in a deeply traumatic and toxic home, that could be a recipe for disaster. Not always, but that could be, then that psychopath then turns to a killer.
So I've been saying,
like all the clouds, you know, are aligned. And I guess that I wanted to ask about Rex Heuermann. You know, I don't know anything about his past, his childhood. I'm very curious. If he is a serial killer, he's been accused, he has not been convicted. If he is, and all the things that we have learned about him are true, what are some things we may expect to find in his past and how he was raised in his childhood? And
yeah, it's an interesting question and risking making it oversimplified because we tend to, when we're trying to give sound bites and like, okay, these are tendencies, this is what we're seeing or what we have seen through research. Look, you can become a serial killer with almost no environmental triggers. A lot of our serial killers come from normal backgrounds. We hunt, we dig, we search for that environmental trigger that made them this way so that we feel better, that we feel like we have control, that we can protect people and ourselves. But the reality is there are plenty of serial killers who come from that good backgrounds.
I love that you say that because my dad's side of the family couldn't be, they're so great. I love my dad's side of the family. They're hardworking. They've gotten a lot of shit. Because people are like, once you have a serial killer in the family, they look at you all like guilty by association and they dissect your family. And I feel like we have a great family. Do we have probably some dark humor? Yeah.
Oh, no.
How dare you?
Yeah.
But you have to do that to survive sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
It's gallows humor.
Yeah.
But Melissa, I'm glad you're bringing that up. And I say this often on my podcast. We give ourselves too much credit and too much blame because we tacitly pass down these genes that control more of our personality than almost anything else. And that's particularly true with a serial killer. So many of them come from loving, wonderful backgrounds. Now, these impulsive type of killers, these really like these rule breakers from day one, sometimes you'll see more trauma in their backgrounds. And you can see trauma, especially if you dig long enough. You're going to find trauma in anyone's background, really. But we see a lot of serial killers, even in other countries, from just the most wonderful parents.
Okay, so one thing that I'm so glad I have this podcast, this forum to be able to talk to you. First of all, it gives me a great excuse to get to know you, like invite you on.
We're besties.
Because now we're besties. Because if I didn't have this podcast, so I would have to find a way to meet you in another way. I'm sure I would find another way. But what have you heard and have you watched any of the news with Rex Heuermann and his wife, his estranged wife, Asa? And what are your thoughts about the visuals and what you're seeing?
I just like, that's what we see when we have a serial killer. Often they're a little weird, because they have to be, they can't be like, you'll find that they, might run a Boy Scout group, but they're not best friends with their neighbors. And I wasn't surprised at all. Of course, he's a little odd, keeps to themselves.
Well, they don't have social graces because they don't have the ability to empathize, I think. And that's what I found with my father is he had limited social abilities.
Like socially awkward.
Did he seem like he was on the spectrum at all?
No, he was actually very charming. But when it came to like normal party environments, like when you're mingling with people, he was a little awkward because you would never be able to empathize with, when you listen to somebody when they're telling you a story, he didn't have that ability. It's about him. He's a narcissist. It's not about him. He doesn't care. He didn't care at all.
He didn't care.
Yeah.
Did he treat, I don't know this part of your background. Did he, and you've probably said this 300 times, so I'll take this offline, but did he treat you guys as extensions of himself that he cared deeply about?
Yes.
Or, okay. Because it goes both ways with psychopathic men.
My weight, I had to be thin. And he was very focused on his weight. So he would say, hey, he called me Missy. He would say, hey, Missy, you're getting a little thick. And I think, we talked about almond moms earlier, but I think I had a little bit of body issues from having a father who, drove in about what I look like. And he cared a lot about our persona, like our optics as a family, that he was a good father, that he had to be looked at as a good dad.
Yeah. They have that narcissism to them. Psychopaths do. At the end of the day, they don't care as much as a true narcissist does, because they're not as insecure, but they do that whole, the optics are so important. Now, you can get a Rex who's like, that he might need that kind of adulation from his family, but he doesn't necessarily need it from his outside circles. And you kind of need to be married to somebody like him. You kind of need to be a little weird yourself. So, because you have to be, and everyone's saying, oh, she must have known. I'm thinking, no.
I'm glad you're saying that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know, but I started a GoFundMe for her, and it's raised over $50,000. Nice. And the reason why I started it is one thing that my dad said to me that I have found actually to be true in life is not everything is what it appears to be. And when I saw the optics in the media of her just looking downtrodden, beat up, bewildered, I thought about my own mother. And when my mom divorced my dad and how like she was destitute, and I knew Asa filed for a divorce from Rex. And when you're going through an investigation, everything's seized. And I knew she would have limited resources. So I started the GoFundMe. And that is one of the things that I have found is like a lot of people said, which I was happy about. A lot of people said, she's a victim too. Thank God. Hallelujah. People are getting it. So the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, the work of true crime in general, I think people are starting to understand that serial killers and violent perpetrators are in a silo of their own, and sometimes the families are not involved. But then there's a couple people who said the same thing that I hate, which is she's complicit. She knew. And I'm like, why?
I know those people.
The odds are, I think, against that. Like, I think, what are the odds that she knew and was okay with it?
No, and I think you're right, Jami. It's when I first started working in true crime, and I had my first show where I actually started talking about, hey, like some of this is biology. Some of this is, look at brain trauma. 60% of our male inmates have head trauma, measurable on an MRI. People got upset. They want, we're a very punitive culture. Yes. We want everyone to have known right from wrong and to have made a bad decision and have accountability for all of it. The truth is less convenient and people don't like it.
Alexis is familiar. I was 18 years old, living with my mom. She was freshly divorced, lived in an apartment. Long story short, I go across the street, go to the grocery store, get some things. Unbeknownst to me, a man was following me the whole time into my apartment complex. I saw him at a certain point and had chills. I was scared, but I was 18 years old. I had no experience with crime. And I thought bad things only happen to people on the news. So I went against my gut. Instead of getting in the car and driving to the police station, because I was so alarmed, I just got out and there he was. And I walked into my apartment. I go to my mom's room, tell her what I got. And lo and behold, I go to walk into my apartment and my bedroom, and he's in there.
What?
So assuming he followed me home from the grocery store.
Didn't you lock your door?
That's a funny thing. We're lock freaks. And my mom has always been a lock freak, but it was summertime and I was just a dumb teenager. My bedroom door or my bedroom window was like the bottom floor apartments. It's always a sliding glass door that leads out to a little porch. I left it cracked like this much, but I had the vertical blinds and the screen closed. Didn't even give it a second thought. My mom's home. Like, I'm just going to go across the street. She was studying for the bar at the time. I knew she'd be up, come home. And when I walked into my bedroom, the crazy thing is like a movie is I walked in right as he's walking in. And it's very apparent to me that he thought he was going to catch me off guard because he knew I was in my mom's bedroom at the time because he could hear, outside her window. We've replayed all this. And he thought, I've got an opportunity. I'm going to go in her room, well, what was he going to do? Was he going to hide in my walk-in closet? Was he going to hide under my daybed? I was about to go to bed. Who knows what would have happened, but I caught him.
Right.
And
you took him off guard, so he left.
Yes. And that is the thing. It was very apparent when I walked in that I startled him. He scared the shit out of me, but I was angry. When I saw him, I thought, and I was like a sassy teenager or whatever, but like, I was just kind of like, you fucking pervert, get out. Who the fuck are you? Get out. Like, I was cussing at him and I was like, ugh. I remember that my mom, the one thing she remembers me going is like, ugh. Like,
Ew.
yeah,
You're not even cute.
You're not even cute, bro. You're like old and whatever.
But that is really scary. And when I do talk to killers, they'll tell me like they wait until the moment's right. They probably have 5 false starts before they actually commit the rape or the murder.
Yes. And that's when you hit the nail on the head. Because when I've talked to, people in the field, psychology, experts, just to kind of get some knowledge of like what was going through his head, why did he do this? And what, very likely he had tried this before or done this before and had perfected it.
Or not perfected it.
He had a couple more to go.
He had a couple
more to go. And he's really lucky because my mom did come in running with her gun after she finally realized I'm in a confrontation. She thought it was my boyfriend at the time because he used to come in he was very like comfortable with my family. Yeah, I know. Exactly. No, it's not me. So no wonder I was a teenage mom.
Wait, all the math is adding up.
It's all adding up here.
Family patterns.
Yes. But my mom did. She didn't realize she was so into her studies at the time that she didn't realize I was in trouble. She thought by me going, ew. And I was like saying the F word, but it's like, she's like, oh, she could be, joking around with her boyfriend at the time. But then something clicked and Mama Bear kicked in. My mom's always packing heat. Got her gun out of her desk, runs in, and she's like literally like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, oh my God, he ran. Like you went that way. But it's just it was trauma, but like I really have not, I've brushed it off for so many years. Like, it happened. Like I survived. He didn't touch me. Like I'm lucky, but because that didn't happen, I never consider myself like a survivor. It's only the day I met you, it was a survivor's event. I didn't go there as a survivor. I went there because my friends were hosting an event and I wanted to support them and I missed them. And it was like, oh, you're having something in LA? I'll be there.
Yeah.
And
so the Vice.com was doing a documentary about ethical true crime and the fascination of the true crime genre. And it was Color Laundry and Tara Newell that were hosting this event in Los Angeles, and they invited me to come while the film crews were there and stuff. And it was just pretty much like it was a meetup, it was just a meetup. So that's where I met Jami, and we had a moment during the evening where we just all went around and shared our experience. And then Jami said, well, I'm not like you, Melissa, victim. And I'm like, well, there's no like, you don't have to justify victim by like some kind of level or measurement, and pain is pain and trauma is trauma. Yeah.
Of course there's worse trauma.
Right. Of course.
Right.
And
that's pretty true.
But like, well, and that's what I also say about Asa and the adult children, Victoria and Christopher, who are the family members of Rex Heuermann. And I would say that about my mother and my siblings and my family, is that we are crime victim survivors. Because while we did not lose our lives, we suffered other losses.
Your life is still defined by this.
It is. Yeah, it is. And I'm never going to sit here and compare victimhood, because we don't have to do that. When you're a victim, you don't have to do that.
It's not either or it's that and. Like
exactly.
I mean, would you say to a rape survivor, well, you only got raped by one person. I was raped by 2.
You never would.
You've already crossed the threshold into trauma. And of course, within there is going to be worse criminals, worse victims, all of that. But thank you for giving a voice to that narrative, because I come up against, I do a lot to say like, hey, maybe the parents didn't know, or like maybe the parents were good parents. Especially during Columbine, we saw a lot of, parent hate. And I don't know about their particular parenting, but it's not fair to assume, it really isn't. And there's another genre of criminals we don't talk a lot about, and that's those who don't get caught. Yeah. And they are categorically different. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking like, well, their family's better off that they never get caught, but the victims aren't. Because I've talked to a lot of, the families of the killers. I do that as much as I talk to the victims or the families of the victims. And in some ways it's a trauma that you are blamed for. Right. So it can be really, really devastating for them too. And I mean, you're speaking from personal experience.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I think honestly, from perpetrators' family members, I would say the number one person I see that carries the greatest pain is a mother of a perpetrator.
I can't.
Like she
a
made
mother
them.
of a serial killer, a
Mm-mm.
mother. I met with
It's just
Cindy.
not
I met with
simple.
Cindy Watts, the mother of Chris Watts, and she carries an unfathomable pain, because there's a mother's guilt in that. Like, what could I have done differently?
Well, and he killed her grandchildren.
Yes, and that too.
Yeah.
Killed her
But
grandchildren.
I'm here to just plant this flag in the ground. I mean, I have met and spent time with psychopathic serial killers who, had I not had their bio in front of me, and I'm trained, I would never have known in a million years. I get comfortable with them.
They're so good at it.
And yeah, they're sloppier when they're little, but they're little. Like they, a child psychopath's so much fun because they have no idea not to say, I love it when my mom's bleeding or the neighbor died.
Yeah.
They get older, they learn the language of sounding like you have empathy. And so you start to believe them, but they're that good.
But I notice as they get older, what appear to do is mirror. Like they look for cues from another person.
Yeah, because
to
they don't
find
have
out.
this feeling.
They don't have it. It's like they talk about that with Ted Bundy. Like
They'll
he was
be
very
like-
good at like putting on.
Sometimes, so like in interviews with a serial killer, what I noticed is that the interviewer will say, "Did you feel guilty? Did you feel sad?" And they'll say, "I felt sad. I felt guilty." Like they
give the right robotic answers.
Yeah, well, they don't
but-
say robotic like that, but I'm like, my point is that they search for what's the right answer,
Right.
You know, and then
because they know
feed
what
it.
they're supposed to do.
They fish for it and they feed it back.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why in Cleckley's book, The Mask of Insanity, or The Mask of Sanity, he says they learn the language of emotion, but not the music. So it's like someone telling you like, oh, do you, experience this blank thing that you have no idea what they're talking about? So you start studying them. Like, that's what I'm supposed to feel. Great. What words do we use? Wonderful. And so that's another reason why we looked at this in children, because we didn't want them to learn the language yet of how to, lie and pretend that they felt remorse, guilt, and empathy.
Well,
That's so
the
fascinating.
blame thing, it just is very real. You've talked about how, perpetrators' families are blamed. How did you not know? I guess that's the only reason I brought up my own personal stories, that like, it's on a much smaller level. But people, when I brought my story public and told on the podcast and YouTube, whatever, you get all these comments that like, you're stupid. Like, why'd you get out of the fucking car? You said you were scared, dude, get in your car, go to so they all like know what they would do. They know what they, So I'm just saying like the blame is just very, and it needs to stop. But
I saw that a lot in the Kohlberger case with the students that survived.
Yes.
That they were like, you saw him, you didn't do this.
Why didn't you do this?
Yeah, there's
as if she knew right then that she was face to face with a killer. Like as if she just knew in the middle of the night, like, oh my God, I've got to call the police or stab this guy because he's a bad guy. Like
you don't know your fight or flight or freeze.
And I can speak to this, and you can too. Like we've all had traumatic situations. I did nothing that I thought. Jami, today, I would like to say that I would have done everything different in my personal story. I don't even recognize the girl who made those choices. Like,
do any of us recognize our 18-year-old self?
Right.
No.
Oh God, I hope not. She long gone. Like I have like divorced myself from her. No, but like you don't recognize yourself because it's trauma. You're in shock, and you cannot have it all played out in your mind that if that were to happen again, like this is what I would do. You don't know what you would do. And I did nothing of what I thought I would do.
Even today, I do things differently than I think I will.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to Rex Heuermann because I think this is a great opportunity to answer some questions so that so you made a good point. You're like, you're going to put this flag in the ground. I want to put the flag in the ground of saying, can we stop saying, how did you not know to the family members?
Yeah. It's victim blaming.
Okay. So I feel like to unpack that, we have to start with the question, how do predators lead double lives?
How does anyone lead a double life? Think about all these people you read. Oh my God, my husband had a gambling habit. My husband was doing meth. My husband had prostitutes on the side. He had a second family. It happens all the time. How much do you really know someone who's trying to hide things from you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if you're bright and you really want to hide something from someone you think you can't, you can.
Affairs.
You can.
They
Happens
happen
constantly.
all the time.
And it's the same phenomenon. We only hear about those who are caught. This stuff happens with the frequency you don't want to know about, you're not comfortable with, and you are only hearing about the people who are telling you they found their husband doing something. Maybe, there's lots of things that people find their husbands or wives doing that you never even hear about. And then most of them go unfound. There's this idea, I would know if my husband's cheating. No, you wouldn't.
No,
you wouldn't.
They don't want you to know. They will find a way for you not to know.
Unless you are suspecting it and you're looking for it but you're not typically looking for, I wonder if my husband's a serial killer.
Right. Like who asked that?
Who would ever? Well, it's like that. I don't think your brain ever goes to the word. And that's why I didn't listen to the red flags. My brain went to, I'm going to put, no, Jami, come on. You're being like over dramatic. Your brain never goes to the worst case scenario. It goes to the typical scenario.
To the normal scenario.
Right. So when I see this man and he's scaring me for very good reason, but I just was like, God damn, just get out of the car, Jami. And like, oh, well, you're going to be in your apartment in 2 seconds.
And Jami, you're forgetting this whole thing. You probably 10 times a week have somebody looking at you that makes you uncomfortable. And you know what I'm saying? Like if you
live like that.
Yeah, if you live like that.
And if you're a pretty 18-year-old girl, you're going to have, there's a fine line between a guy looking at you and like, oh, where's she going? To the guy who's going to show up in your bedroom.
Sure.
Exactly. They don't look that different from each other.
They don't. And you just don't, it is a rare case scenario, what happened to me, your personal life and for your experience. So your brain doesn't go to, oh, this guy's probably going to chop me up tonight. Like I really need to go to the cops. No, you're going to push it down and just be like, oh God, just get out of the car. It's going to be fine. And so I hate that question. I'm so glad you brought it up. It is extremely victim blaming to be like, so how did you not know? Because Melissa and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but it's like to say, to Melissa's point this morning, to say, how did you not know? You're insinuating I was complicit. If I knew, then I was okay.
That's ridiculous.
With him killing sex workers.
It's ridiculous.
So it's ridiculous. We want to put it to bed.
So I want to ask another question, Michelle, of you. How is the family the facade for the double life?
Right. And I don't know necessarily that a serial killer puts that together a priori, that they are like, okay, I better find myself a wife and have some kids so that I can go on to have this prolific life. But what it does, it has utility to it. It creates a front where you are less suspicious of somebody like that. So one of the ways we study people who have never been caught for their crimes is by hiring them from temp agencies. So I worked on this study very early on.
I'm deeply fascinated.
Very fascinated. That one really got my
Tell
attention.
Me more,
This is
Dr. Ward.
So it was before I matriculated into USC and I was just, trying to get in. I wanted to work with Adrienne Rain or Laura Baker. And I'll be a free TA or a research assistant. What do you want me to do? And so they had me in the basement of USC Hospital measuring MRIs of people they had hired from temp agencies. They got government immunity. So whatever these people told them, Adrienne Rain couldn't report it.
Wow.
And it turned out 10% of the people he had hired had either attempted or committed a violent crime. And he's a genius. He's like, I'm like, how did you know to go to a temp agency? And he's like, well, typically they have nomadic lifestyles. They can't hold down a job. They can't be part of a normal society. So you're going to catch a few. Now with serial killers, it's a little bit different because they don't have the impulsivity, the fiery rage when they're getting ready to kill. They're cold-blooded, they're calculating, they're predatory. So they can hold down some normalcy. Now, their crimes are weirder and creepier typically than your impulsive type of hot-blooded killer, but they have this gift of this ability to look really normal on the outside, or at least if you don't look too closely.
That's just in Rex Heuermann's case, just points back to he very likely, they didn't catch him for how many years,
right.
So
that's not uncommon.
He's very good at not letting people know what he's doing, which means to me, it's highly unlikely that his family knew.
With serial killers, what makes a serial killer dismember their victim versus one that just discards the entire body?
I think it's
Is that
motivation.
morbid? Sorry, that's
Right. Oh God, try to scare me with that. Maybe, I don't know who listens to this, but on my podcast, I'm like, and then the liver was cut and filleted. It's motivation, and it changes. One of the biggest misconceptions is that serial killers don't change, evolve over time. In their victimology, in their MO, like how they commit their murder, the weapons they use, where they dispose of the bodies, and who they choose. But it does change over time, and it does for multiple reasons. Look, we're never going to, as frequently as we hear about serial killers, they're actually quite rare in nature. So collecting data on them is always a little funky, but essentially, we do see this ramp up. So we see killings start, they're a little sloppy.
About what age did they start killing?
Well, it just depends, right? It depends on where they are in their trajectory of urge and how close are they to people they can kill. And, a
little bit of opportunity, a little bit about urge, it's
right. And they tend to have reduced anticipatory fear. So they don't get as scared as we do biologically. They don't have the somatic markers of anticipatory fear. So like if you're going to blast somebody in a study and you say, we're going to count from 10 to 0, they don't start sweating. Their heart rate doesn't increase like ours does.
Really?
So
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we measured it, and it happens in children. It's so if a child with psychopathic features also has this somatic difference. So, but most of them do not become serial killers. But I think that it's important to realize that a serial killer sometimes needs to up the ante like a drug. Like they're not getting the high they used to get. So I'm going to cut them up a little bit more and do something a little different and get them more intimate with my kill. That can be a reason they change, or they've decided to dispose differently.
And could it also just be like, I really want to keep doing this. And if I just dismember these bodies, it's going to be harder for people to find them, which means that it's going to be harder for them to tie me to this body.
I'm here to tell you, if a serial killer really doesn't want to be found, it's getting harder for them, especially when y'all keep giving the DNA away, catching people left and right.
Yeah.
But previous to there being cameras on every corner and such wonderful ways to track people, most serial killers don't get caught.
Okay.
Really? How many serial killers do you think are amongst us now? Can you quantify that?
Yeah. Oh, shoot.
Well, I have no idea, but I know if you go to other countries, it's actually probably more prolific than it is here. There's so many, like India and Asia, and there's just more people and less accountability for where the people are. So if you want to be a serial killer there, you get more people. Russia has a ton of fun ones. But I have no idea how many walk among us, but I know it's not that common. I just know we think we have a handle. All we know are the killers who've been caught.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. That's all we know a lot about.
What is the first reported serial killer? I heard it was a Native American. I thought I Googled it some time ago, but
when, like how far back?
I don't know. I don't remember, but
yeah.
I heard I think what I read is that serial killers existed even with Native Americans or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. That every culture has a serial killer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not saying that sounded like, I don't believe Native Americans started serial killers.
Oh God, no.
No.
Okay.
But back, exactly. In the times that, Native Americans were, it's not a new thing. It's just, we just know more about it now, but certainly like human beings are human beings. And complexities
do we have existed throughout time?
Have always existed.
Do we have Egyptian serial killers?
Absolutely.
I imagine
the beginning of time. This is not a characteristic. You read about it in ancient literature, and there's actually something I read about some tribal culture where if somebody in the tribe themselves acted in ways that were selfish and unempathetic and maybe damaging, they just push them off the cliff during a hunting trip because the community can't exist that way. So I think since the beginning of time, but listen, we have to remember this one important unpopular thing that's going to lose you guys some listeners, but it's true. Psychopathy is not always bad. Sometimes you need to be a little psychopathic to push the button.
Well, I have to tell you something.
I read something too.
I got you guys so excited about that.
No, this is good because I read something that like actually certain companies look for psychopaths. I'm dumbing this down for certain high-powered positions because you have to be shrewd and you have to be so they have the characteristics of somebody who can just, if we need to make cutbacks, they don't give a shit. 1,000 people will lose their jobs and they don't really give a shit about. Like, I'm making stuff up, but like I did read something that like they're sought after sometimes in certain high-powered and stress positions where it's like a multi-billion-dollar company, let's say.
So Michelle, I want to tell you, back in 2018, I met Dr. Fallon. Do
I
you
know
know Dr. Fallon?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who are listening who don't know who Dr. Fallon is or didn't listen to my first season of Happy Face, then you'll know that Dr. Fallon was studying PET scans of violent offenders and found some certain markers in the PET scans. And I think a colleague mixed in his PET scan and found out like that he found the markers of a serial killer on an unidentified, file. And he later turned it over and discovered it was him, that he was he was not the serial killer. Sorry.
There's a
He was
podcast about this.
He was a psychopath. And so I went to meet with Dr. Fallon to get a PET scan. I got one, and he had me so ramped up about the results of my PET scan. So I went to Orange County, I met with him, and he had my head lit up on his screen. And he said, Melissa, it's not a bad thing to be a psychopath. Like, it's a warrior gene. And and like you need psychopaths to be surgeons. You need them to like these high functioning jobs. It's like society needs psychopaths. So I thought he's leaning me to like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Like you are.
Yeah.
But
and he's like, you are not.
Fine. But you are not one of those interesting.
You are not
You're
the psychopath.
average.
You're just a boring person.
Yeah.
You're like, ooh.
Well, and I think it was true. Like I think his PET scan showed. You're going to see reduced activity or reduced size even in the amygdala, the limbic system of serial killers or psychopaths. We'll say psychopaths. And then in the impulsive killers, you see more of the frontal lobe stuff, but you can see those in serial killers too. So Fallon's scan, I've seen it. That comes on the heels of Adrian Raine, who in the early 90s, he's one of the first to do brain scans on killers because he's like, there's something here. And he did it on himself, and he totally had the brain scan of a psychopath. Absolutely, the brain scan of a psychopath. And I worked with him for years, and I'm here to tell you, he's probably not, he's the most charming British man you're ever going to meet, but he's probably not super burdened with what people think of him. Yeah. He probably not. I would never call him a psychopath, but it also just shows the error of the science to a degree. These are population statistics, and I think that's a problem when we look at this. The tendency, you measure a bunch of amygdalas that in the average size is less than a bunch of normal amygdalas. So it's really hard to see with one person. Now, the exception to that, and I think it's important, is in the courtroom. If you have this person who has missing half of their temporal lobe or has a giant contusion in the prefrontal cortex of their brain, that is a bit of a mitigating factor. Do I think that we need to be using that to let people off of crimes? No, but I think that the educational part of it, because there are things we can do about it. And that's like my whole goal, but before I leave this planet, is like, can we just change the narrative a little bit, get the information out of the ivory tower, get it here, which you girls think you are doing, and let's also talk about what we know, what we can be done about such things.
Sure.
So,
like Aaron Hernandez,
I can't go with that.
Yeah. It's such a hot, polarizing, controversial case, but he did have a lot of brain damage.
He had a lot of brain damage,
but exactly. When you know what happened, you're like, but that was pretty cold and repeated. And, so just.
Look, I didn't study him as a researcher, but one of his attorneys did reach out to my jury consulting firm, litigation consulting firm, to have us pick his jury, and none of us wanted to.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we did the Casey Anthony trial. Like, we're not afraid.
Yeah, of course.
But
if you have strong feelings about something.
It's because he hires hits.
Oh, scary.
Yeah. That was our fear. When you make them mad, you die. So I deal with serial killer or murderers, criminals a lot, and they don't scare me. But when people are really comfortable hiring hits, I get a little nervous.
That's scary.
Yeah.
The first doctor that you mentioned that discovered, oh my gosh, I'm a psychopath.
Dr. Fallon.
Dr. Fallon. I listened to a podcast about, I think it was him. And I think he had mentioned something like, and then I started to recall like, traits of like psychopaths, or, obviously not one size fits all, but he would be somebody who would like put other people in dangerous situations and they would be a little fearful. Like, for example, we're in a buggy, a motorized vehicle, we're going up and up and up, and everybody's like, oh my God, I'm scared. Like, can you slow down? And he's like, I'm having so much fun. I'm such a thrill. Oh, well, that they're scared. And like, it's like, he didn't care really
Doesn't
that
affect him.
they were scared, and he realized that about himself. I could be thinking of the wrong, but I think it's him where he realized that like, oh yeah, I am in those where they clearly were fearful, but I didn't really do anything about it.
Well, and sometimes they enjoy that look on people's faces,
Yeah.
especially since they don't experience it.
I know that look because I watched my dad torture animals, and it's the pure enjoyment. Like the more you scream, the more that they enjoy it. I do remember that. And I try to express it to people. Like it almost was like the more I scream, and the more I was screaming, the more it was enjoyable.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Because that's really fucked up.
Yeah, it's really fucked up. One thing that I would say is the silver lining of being raised by a serial killer is that I felt like it gave me a window into seeing predators, like being able to spot them. I feel that intuitively, I kind of felt like if they fell more in line with my father's vibe, for lack of a better word, I could steer clear. So that leads me to want to ask you about choosing a partner. You're getting married.
Yeah.
I'm married for my second time, and I have a person I care about deeply, and I need your advice because she has interest from a boy, and this is like a 20-something-year-old person. She has interest from a guy who is totally wooing her and came out right out the gate and said, I have a DV charge, domestic violence charge. My spidey senses, my red flags bursted all over me. And I told this person, no, there's a million other guys out there. However, she explained to me that it was in self-defense, but I'm like, is that the spinning of, he's trying to get ahead of the narrative? So I wanted to just like give you that context. If a guy has a DV charge, is he necessarily a bad apple, like walk away? Or could it mean other things? Like, how could you dissect if this guy is worthy of time or walk away?
Get your hands on the police report
Mm-hmm.
and look at the details. I would never throw somebody's whole entire person away on a DV charge, because sometimes a woman can just say, because we have had situations, and I say this gently, where that's been weaponized. Women get, we're human, we're smart, we get clever. If I want to hurt somebody, I can create this. I know a person who put child pornography on her husband's computer to get him in trouble. It's not unheard of. Chances are he's an aggressive person. But there are exceptions to that. And you'd really need to know the details of it, not from his mouth.
Yeah.
Not from his mouth. That's, that's like a riddle, and would I say if this matches up to any other red flags, then put those together. Don't ignore. I mean, we call them vendettas, rojas, like wrapped in them. Yeah. That I would be uncomfortable with somebody young getting wrapped up with that. However, I have seen on occasion where a DV's been weaponized to hurt somebody. And
that's the narrative that he gave, is that his girlfriend, obviously they say crazy, my crazy ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, God, now I'm triggered.
My crazy ex-girlfriend was attacking me, and I pushed her off of me. And I'm like, oh,
well, then she would have had a DV charge too.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a little more bothered, and this could just be my own personal bias. I'm a little more bothered by what seems to be a little bit of love bombing. I could be totally wrong.
Red flag. Red flag. No. She's not wrong.
The flowers, this person told me I've never been treated so well, like by a guy. This guy treats me like everything.
Remember Talented Mr. Ripley?
This person,
Dirty John.
This person I love, it is bright, has a savings, perfect credit, has her life together, is a beacon of light and beauty. And so it doesn't surprise me that some guy would want to attach himself to her.
Yeah. Well, then she's smart and she's going to see it eventually. It just teach this friend of yours.
That's what the people around me that know this person have told me, is like, she's an intelligent woman. She's an intelligent young woman. She's going to see it. But because of my background, I am incredibly afraid.
Of course.
Because my mom, after my dad was arrested for serial murder, my mom married another violent man who brutalized my mother. He nearly killed her. When she passed away, I opened up her safe and I found all the police reports of strangulation and abuse and but I witnessed it too as a young girl. And my mom didn't leave her abusive husband until she got cancer and needed treatment. And she knew I wouldn't go to the house to help her because he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she got her own apartment. And anyway, so my mom ended up passing away, still legally married to him. And that was one of the things that was eye-opening to me is survivorship. So everything, thankfully my mom had a will, but the surviving spouse gets everything. So her abuser could have got all of the assets,
Absolutely.
everything. And then I ended up fighting him for my mom to honor her will. And he found out through the lawyer. I sent him a notice and said, I'm going to seek my mom's portion of the assets for the inheritance of my siblings and I. And I got a phone call actually after doing a prison interview. I got out of the prison and I have a phone call from the Spokane Mental Health Clinic. And they said, we just are obligated to tell you, but we just saw your stepdad here and he had said that he wants to kill you and he's going to stab you to death.
Oh my God.
And
this is insane.
I was like, he wants to stab you to death. And I'm like, why? And because I was going after
You're in the way.
I was in the way.
Yeah.
Where is he now? I'd like to have a word with him.
I know, right?
Many words.
Here's the thing.
I ended up winning everything that I sought out to. But the one thing that gave me joy, and this is maybe bad, but I got a message on Facebook Messenger from one of his biological children that said, my dad is really upset. He feels that mom is revenging him.
What?
Oh, and she probably was.
I was like,
yeah.
Yes, and it's me.
Yeah, exactly.
I am not afraid of you anymore. I'm an adult woman and you can't scare me. And I'm going to seek what is entitled. And so I was able to get my siblings their inheritance.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Yeah, I cut the check
You're a
2
fighter.
months ago.
Good for you.
It was great.
Yeah.
But talking about your friend,
Yeah.
I recommend not using your personal experience because it feels too rare. It feels too, okay, that happened, but it's not going to happen to me.
Because you're the odd one.
It's not relatable.
Really crazy.
Yeah, it's not relatable. I would talk about I've been covering a lot of teen violence. 1 out of 10 of our high school girls gets hit by her boyfriend by the time she graduates. So it's like one out of 10 a year.
We live in a world like this still?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, I did an episode about it and I was like, look, not many things shock me, but this does. This violence within teen relationships and it always begins with love bombing.
Oh,
always begins
me
with
Can
love
you,
bombing.
Michelle, describe love bombing for listeners?
So I describe it a little bit differently than most people. I describe it as anyone who's trying to speed up the trajectory of a relationship. So we all get that, oxytocin feeling that like, oh, I really want to tell him I love him, but I've only known him 15 minutes. It's those who say it when it's an inappropriate time to say it. It's too soon. Ride those feelings out. And usually it comes along with, well, why didn't you call me? I couldn't get a hold of you. And well, I really miss you. And it feels like you like your family more than you like me. It shifts. So it starts with, you are everything to me. You are the best thing I've ever known. I've never felt this way before. I've never felt this way before is key. And using the word, I've been love bombed and fell for it in my 30s. Yeah. So, I am going on my second marriage.
Upgrade.
But I've been looking around and I'm like, I think we need to broaden the definition as people usually want to speed up the relationship because they want control. Whether they know it or not. And it looks like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. You don't really know how you feel about someone until you're in it for 18 months and all of those hormones have kind of settled down a little bit. So I think that is, it's a red flag, but it's not a breakable offense, but it's certainly something to pay attention to. And don't meet them where they are because it's not a healthy place. And when you don't meet them where they are, you'll see them losing a bit of control. And
you'll know what they
fussy.
freak out.
Yeah, this one's not going to work out for me. I was really trying to control her, but she's pulling back,
Right.
you know, so
and then
maybe
they
I move
guilt
on
you.
to the next.
Well,
and then
but first they'll guilt you and try to control you.
Yeah, like almost like, well, you know, I just thought like I bought you like a dozen roses. I delivered them in front of everybody at your work, like, and then you chose to go to this party instead of come to my house. Like
That's exactly
like
it.
guilt, you know, and I've heard it in so many cases that I've covered on my other show. And but the love bombing thing, now I don't know if this is something different, but there's also in domestic violence situations, DV situations, it's like, again, people look at these women and they accuse them and they go, well, why the fuck did you stay? This is how you've called 911 a couple times. Like you just keep going back and you keep going back. But isn't there that period of they do this horrible thing and they're physical with you, but then they're on their best behavior and they win.
And they're so sorry.
And they're so sorry. And, oh, flowers, babe, do you want coffee and, bed? I'm making things up, but you know what I mean? Like they know how to win you back. They know how to manipulate you into thinking like, I will never do that again. I was having a really bad day and this and that. So that's not love bombing. It's called something else.
Yeah, it's repair.
Yeah.
It's the apology and the repair. And if you are a normal, empathetic person, it's really hard. It works. It's really hard to be like, I know you're sorry and I see you're sorry, but I'm still moving on. And that does not come naturally to us. We're like, okay, all right. Redemption's a real thing. And, there's some people who are biblical in their ability to forgive people. And it's not about, look, I know you're sorry. I just don't think we match. And I just don't, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah, this is really
So I have to ask you because there's a buzzword now that everybody's throwing around with failed relationships or just relationships that are toxic, narcissism.
Yeah. It's so
what do you
overused.
think of, okay, everybody says my ex is a narcissist.
Yeah. Or my ex is a borderline or my ex is toxic or
what do you think about people throwing out the word narcissism so like frequently, like just throwing it out?
I mean, just look up the definition and then you'll stop using it so much. I mean,
they're like, I was discarded. I was like, they use all these terms and I'm like, do we really have a rampant narcissism problem or is it just people are labeling their exes as narcissists?
Well, it goes viral and everybody hears it. It's like the word trigger. I just said it a few minutes ago and I try to stay away from it because it's also like, I'm so triggered. But I hate saying that because it's like there are people who actually are like really triggered because they've been in a traumatic situation.
Yeah, PTSD.
PTSD is a real, yes. Yeah. But it's the same thing with like narcissism. And I'm guilty of this as well. I try to be very careful because I don't have the chops to be able to say if somebody's a narcissist. I don't know, but yeah, it's a word that's thrown around, but it's a viral buzzworthy word. And we're all into true crime. We all are on social media every single day. Narcissist, so it's like, oh, it's like that insult that now you can sling like, oh yeah, he was an asshole, such a narcissist.
Yeah. And then you're off the hook.
But what makes a real narcissist?
Well, okay. So usually when I see these memes or these like Instagram or TikTok armchair experts talking about narcissists. No. I'm not an expert on this either.
Yeah.
But when I say it, it's usually them just describing a relationship where the guy's not that into you. So he doesn't call you back very often. And like maybe he said them some things that wooed you into bed with him, but that's about it. Like there's no crime with somebody not being interested in you. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of like, well, he's a narcissist and he fed me breadcrumbs. And then I stayed there. It's like, you did that too. Yeah. Now, there are real narcissists, there are people who they need fan clubs and they need their egos are so fragile. They're constantly lying about their accomplishments and blowing themselves up and manipulating situations. They're not as common as we're led to believe with how that word is thrown around. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, he's acting like he wants to date multiple people. And you took the breadcrumbs and ignored the 16 other things he said.
And there's also selfishness and narcissism.
That's
two different
right.
things.
They're
right?
describing
so
selfishness.
It's like if a dude or a woman or anybody can be selfish, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a narcissist.
Yeah, I don't think the guy's a good guy. I wouldn't date him.
Sure.
I don't want my kids dating him. But
is he a narcissist?
It's not. Narcissism is it's a clinical term. It's in the DSM. It's a personality disorder.
So I want to ask you. We're going to wrap up here soon, but I want to ask you about how you came up with your podcast, How Not to Raise a Serial Killer. Did I get the title right?
You did.
Yes.
I'm most proud of that damn title. Like
It's an amazing
I love that title. I was like, and I've been holding it in my head for a really long time. So I have found that there is a chasm between what is known in the research world about what we can do to prevent aggressive and violent behavior and what is known in the private sector. So I'm like, how do people like researchers, the ivory tower holds on to stuff and rightfully so in a lot of cases, because if you let the information out, it gets bastardized and it's not necessarily what is meant by the research. Like it can be like, in this particular population with these parameters and constraints, we found this. But give that to somebody and they'll be like, oh my gosh, redheads are violent. No, not the case. We just happen to be studying in Ireland. Like ignoring the fact that, the study happened to take place, in Dublin.
Yeah. Where there's a lot more redheads.
There's more redheads there. So I understand that, but I wanted a platform to kind of say like, look, we know a few things about children who are exhibiting these behaviors and what we can do to put them on the right track. I mean, there's some like simple takeaways that are life-changing, and like biofeedback. I mean, it's life-changing. There's no harm in it. So a lot of people will deny their children's bad behavior because they're afraid to get them labeled. And also the pediatrician has no idea what to do with your cat burning kid, but there should be a place you can go to be like,
is there a place?
Well, I'm hoping, and I'm hoping you guys do it. And I'm hoping, my podcast, definitely that's all we talk about. I give a crime. I talk about what was in the past that would have been red flags and what you can do if you see this in your kid.
Okay, that's so interesting. I encourage everybody to listen to your podcast, How Not to Raise a Serial Killer. It is so insightful, but it's also fascinating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So now when they're not children, so we were just talking about somebody I loved and the red flags. If there is somebody dating now in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever age, what are some things that women can look out for and not selecting just like a serial killer, but a violent perpetrator?
Yeah, somebody who's bad for her.
Just bad in general.
What are some things to look out for in a partner?
There's some bad things that, don't have a lot of red flags, like we talked about. Like some things don't announce themselves. Other things do. So definitely pay attention to temper. Does someone crack easily? Or
what about always blaming all their problems are somebody else's fault?
Accountability is important.
Yeah.
Just in general, don't you want somebody who's accountable to themselves?
Whether they're dangerous or not. Like that just wouldn't be a good partner for me.
I mean, would you like this person as a friend? Does this person make you feel
What
safe?
about a mommy's boy? Is that a red flag?
Our sons are perfect.
Yeah, excuse me.
I'm like, I'm just going to screw this kid up. So I'm like, you are perfect. I hate your girlfriend. I hate your wife.
You're never going to be good enough for my son.
Yeah, he's 9. He overheard me say that I wanted a second girl or a gay boy so that he didn't leave me for a woman. And he was like, what did you mean by that, Mom? He overheard it on a podcast I was on. He's like, I'm not gay and you're upset. I'm like, no, I got over it.
Yeah.
I just explained to him that as moms, we fail to see the flaws in our kids.
Yeah,
I do it too. But a mommy's boy, my son isn't going to stay in love with me. They
grow out of that.
The normal ones do,
And you won't continue to be the center of his world. I know. And I'm really, I can see you're going to crack because you're like, wait. No, I totally know too. I have a son as well. And it's like, I kind of still am a center of his world, a center, but I understand that like if and when he gets married and finds a lifelong partner, like that is now the most important person. And then they have a family. She is not Queen.
He lived inside me.
Dr. Michelle Ward is just not having it.
I already hate her. Sorry if she ever listens to this, but I hate her.
Yeah. Well, I haven't loved every girlfriend either, but
no, I want my son to be happy. You want your son to be happy. But I'm always a little concerned I love when someone respects and loves their mother. Of course. Like you want that. But if someone's like, well, my mommy says this, it's like, and you're in your 20s.
You're annoying.
Let's get off the tits and move on.
That's when it becomes annoying.
Yeah.
We've kept you here. We could talk. I talked to you for like a year straight. You are the best. You're a girl's girl. You are so smart. You are so insightful. And you're so fun.
Yeah. I am a girl's girl. I do like to hang out with chicks.
I get that vibe from you. And I have pretty good vibe detector on that. I think so. But tell us about current projects you're working on. Where can people watch you, listen to you, all those things?
Well, my shows still pop up all the time because I'll get notes from my friends or my kids. So my 2 shows were How sorry, those are podcasts, stalked someone's watching. And that's, by the way, where you see all the love bombings start with these stalkers. Okay. And then the second show I worked on was Mind of a Murderer, which is not to be confused with Mind of a Monster, which is a show on ID that I have nothing to do with, but I do host their podcast, Mind of a Monster. And then I host and produce with this group, How Not to Raise a Serial Killer.
Oh my gosh. So how do you have time to keep your skin in check and glowing?
There's no glowing of the skin. I'm like, what do you mean you guys have adult children?
You're 100% glowing right now.
Yeah.
So we'll have to share those tips offline.
It is hot.
That always helps. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure was all ours. Hey, lie detectors, leave a 5-star rating and drop your favorite lipstick in the review section because we lie detectors don't gatekeep.
And follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Lipstick and Lies if you want to see behind the scenes and clips of us recording each episode. And be a part of the lie detector community.
Executive producers of Lipstick and Lies are Melissa Moore, myself, Jamie Rice, and Sim Sarna. The podcast is co-produced by Cloud 10 Media.
Subscribe to Lipstick and Lies so you don't miss an episode.
We all know that crime is usually a good old boys club, but sometimes the truth lies behind lipstick.